Right, today we're going to cover user interface, meaning these user forms, right, and elements of the user interface and some form of coding, right? So just a recall on what we learned before. You know how to change from code to object. Just right click and choose code or object. So this is the object, the form is an object, and we can actually view the code. Technically speaking, things on the user form are also objects. For example, you can insert a text box like that, right? Let's say for some form of an input, you can do that again, or you can just copy this, right click, copy, and then paste it, thereby having several of that, right? You can add buttons, maybe one button for doing something, another button for doing something else, right? You might want to align them somewhat, and there are ways to align. Something like that, right? So you might want to name your respective text box and etc. in a certain manner. Let's say, for example, this known as text box 1. You might want to name it something else. For example, txt. Let's say I'm doing something like num1, so I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. And this is txt num2. Always make it a point to name something like this, meaning you start with, whether if it's a text box, you start with a txt. If it's a button, for example, you can start with it being a btn, for example, then something something. Let's say I'm not sure what I'm going to use this for, so I'm just now going to name it button left and then button right, btn, and then right. Okay, so left and right, num1, num2. Let's say this is text3, txt third, or maybe result. I'm just gonna show some form of a result here, right? And when or if you wanna say you want to display something on the button here, it just says command button, which might not be indicative, right? So you might want to change it in the caption. So you can change this as maybe calculate, and then this is exit, for example. So exit. So exit is a reserved word in VB and a lot of other programming languages, so I shouldn't be able to name this exit, but I can name it btn exit, right? So exit, and I'm just gonna name this btn calculate instead of left and right. So although left and right is somewhat indicative of what the buttons are, for example, the button on the left and button on the right, but calculate and exit are much better indicative names. So when you want to name your objects, variables, and etc., you want to go with a certain manner of naming which is clear. It clearly indicates what it is for, right? So you can go back to user form, view code. It's still empty here. I can choose this and then choose whichever button, or I can go back to the object and just double click on an element, and it should get me to the code and immediately to a click, right? So here I'm here, and I might need some variables for that. So let's say dim. Let's say I get two values. Let's say, for example, I want to calculate how much is your salary after working several hours, right? So maybe I want to name one salary, and then the next one is hours as integer, for example, right? So I have these two things which I'll then be able to get from the respective text boxes, right? So I'm just going to say salary is equal to let's see, we have text num1, right? So txt one dot value, right? And then hours is, so we just follow through the same one, right? So this one is num2. So as of now, since you're already sure of what you're going to put for text box 1 and 2, you might want to name them something else, but here we just follow through with the same one, right? And then we have the third text box, which name I can't really remember. That is text result, right? So txt dot result. So we're just reversing that. Value is equal to salary times hours, right? So in terms of calculations, we have the same thing as arithmetic calculation. So we have this for addition, right? So this is for addition, this for subtraction, right? And then we have this for multiplication, and then this is for division. So these are the 4 arithmetic calculations, and I'm not entirely sure with Visual Basic, but for a lot of programming languages we have this for modulus, right, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, but we talk about these 4 things first, right, the very basics. So here we have salary times hours, and we'll see if that would work. So just run that. So this is the supposed salary. Again, maybe we work for 5 hours and then we'll calculate. There's an error here, right, which is the same error that Emily was getting. Right, so as you can see here, we haven't set up exit yet. The exit button really does nothing. That's one thing. Another is most of the time it's not really favorable to have a text box which people don't edit. Instead the result goes there. That's another. And then I guess another is this user form. Maybe it shouldn't be called user form. So we're just gonna write down those. So issues, right? So 1, 2, and 3, right? So issues 1 is exit button not configured, right? Issue 2 is result displayed in an awkward manner. Awkward meaning it appears in the text box, which is usually not the case for lots of programming interface or user interface. And then the third one is user form should have a different name, right? And of course I think we should also say, you know, there's no label, right? So what's the meaning of there's no label? We'll have a look at our program again. Right here there's no label indicating that, you know, there's no label indicating that this is for what, that is for what, and so on. So you might want to put the labels inside, right? So caption, hourly pay, right? And then you can just copy that, copy and paste it. You can of course change the what do you call it, alignment and etc. There should be option where you can align center and so on and so forth. For example, something like that. Here it should be, instead of hourly pay, there should be hours. Center, for example, something like that, right? And then this thing, instead of this, maybe we should have something else. If you want to, you can actually edit this, to have this as transparent and that as transparent as well. Sorry, none. Right, so it will appear as if there's nothing there. This is one way of doing it. Or instead of that, you can put a label, and then we display it within the label. I'll show you what I mean. We can name this as the result, LBL result, right? So remember these naming conventions. If it's a text box, start with the TXT. If it's a label, you should start with the LBL. If it's a button, you should start with the BTN, and then the respective indicative name of that particular element or object. Right? I'm going to view the code again. So we look at the issues. First is when we have this, we want to be able to show the result. One is this, the text value, text result value. That's our text box. We can also display it within a label like this. What's the name of our label just now? LBL. Come on with the name of the label. LBL result. LBL result dot caption is equal to salary times hours. Right, so we have this. Next is the exit button. That's another issue. So if you look at the issues, result in an awkward manner text box. Because if you remember, if you imagine your own experience of using a user interface in Word or in any other forms user interface, basically we won't get our result in a text box, because text box we seem to have the thinking that is something that we can edit and type inside, so it's awkward to display result in there, right? Exit button is not configured yet. We're going to configure that now, right? So next is we're going to look at the exit button, button exit, right? So for this, we're just going to put this unload me, right? So basically that is for exiting. So we solved two issues there. Next is user form should have a different name. So we've solved these, right? So I'm just gonna, oopsie, instead of that, maybe we can, how do we strike through? There's a way to strike through, I think. Okay, we strike through that. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna copy that and then apply the same formatting, right? So user form should have a different name. Next we go back to the user form, right? So this is the name of the user form. You can, this is the name and that's the caption. You can say calculate salary or something, hourly pay, right? So that's our user form name, and we'll see if this works. Right, so 50 and say 5 hours and calculate. Here is because we have both the text box and the label active, right? So that's why it's displayed twice. It's displayed twice, right? So you can opt for one to be empty, one to be cancelled out, for example. Right? Go back to the code. Right, so you can have, okay, let's not show it here, for example, just put that as a comment and then run it, right? So 50 tab 5 and then we calculate it, then we get 250, we can exit, right? So of course if you want to, you can have it displayed in a certain manner. For example, you want to put dollar signs and etc., right? So we have solved quite a few things. We can get rid of the text box here. As of now, we have just learned integer. I don't think we have learned things such as, we haven't really used things such as single and so on and so forth yet.